Do you want to take control of your health? Hear the truth about dieting and weight loss? Learn the best strategies for maintaining a healthy lifestyle? This is the Yossi Muller Show.
And welcome to the show. I'm Yossi Muller.
And I'm Dudi Muller.
Dudi is a chef with a background in nutrition.
Yossi is a nutritionist with a background in nutrition.
Every show we do, we take another myth and debunk it.
We crush it.
Today's topic is low fat. People think that if a food is low fat, then it is less fattening. The fat content in a food is very important. It's one of the first things you're supposed to consider when deciding if a food is good for you or not. And it's not true. Dudi, what do you think would happen if you had 7 skinny cows and they ate 7 fat cows? Do you think the 7 skinny cows would stay skinny?
No.
They absolutely would.
Why?
Because even though fat cows are very high in fat, fat is not the only thing to consider when deciding if a food is going to make you gain weight or not. In fact, a fat cow is also very high in calories.
Oh.
And still it won't make a skinny cow gain weight. So clearly, it's not only the fat, and even calories, which we're going to get to soon, is much more important than fat. That's also not the only thing to consider. There are a bunch of things you have to consider, and fat is not high on the list.
So why do people believe that the fat content is so very important?
Well, it's common sense. If we are trying to get rid of fat in our body, shouldn't we avoid it in the food? When I was growing up, I used to think that fat was very bad. And I remember one time, someone brought over a pot of spaghetti and meatballs, and I ate the whole pot of spaghetti and meatballs. And I was thinking like, yeah, it's not good for me. I'm going to get a stomachache, but it's not going to make me gain weight because spaghetti doesn't have any fat.
Ah, that's why we had no supper that night.
Which night?
That night. Every night. Any night you're home, there's no supper. You eat everything.
I ate the whole pot of spaghetti and meatballs.
Because it's important to eat spaghetti because it's not fat.
No, I had a very unhealthy relationship with food for a long time, but I did believe that spaghetti doesn't make you gain weight. But then you get a little older and you find out that, it's not just the fat, it's also sugar, because sugar turns into fat. Sugar is probably not as bad as fat, but it could turn into fat.
Right, because it's not fat yet.
And then you get a little older and you find out more information that carbs are also not okay because that turns into sugar.
And that turns into fat.
So common sense is that fat is bad, and then you have to do some explaining to get people to think that sugar is also bad, and then carbs is an even bigger stretch. But the common sense is that we're supposed to avoid the fat. And the government guidelines have been encouraging low fat for many years.
For years and years, people haven't been educated enough. People thought that fat was the worst aspect of people's diets.
And we are wrong for assuming that because fat in the body and fat in food are not the same thing.
Oh, that is absolutely true. It's been many centuries since people believe that what you ate literally translated into the exact same thing in your body. For example, you eat liver, the pieces of liver that you eat actually go down and become a part of your liver. You eat fish eyes that will help you see. You eat brains that will help make you smarter. We learned over time, science learned that the body breaks down what we eat into smaller parts and uses it for whatever it happens to need or want at that time. Yes, food fat is easily convertible to body fat, but sugar is easily convertible as well. And it also slows the metabolism. It's excess energy, which comes from all of these sources, all sources of food, not just fat. From sugar, from carbs, from protein, from fat, from anywhere. It's the excess energy that's converted into body fat. It's not that food fat becomes body fat. That's not how it works.
Of course not.
What you eat is broken down and used by your body what it needs.
So fat in food does matter, but it's actually the last thing to consider.
What are the things that we should consider before fat and then including fat?
When we're evaluating a food, there are 5 things we should take into account. 1, calories. 2, sugar. 3, protein. 4, fiber. 5, fat. 1 is calories, and fewer calories are better. 2 is sugar, and less sugar is better. 3 is protein, more is better. 4 is fiber, more is better. And finally, fat can matter, and less is better.
Okay. Can we go into a little more detail explaining what the negatives and positive of each of these things are?
Calories, if you have too many calories, they turn into fat, regardless if those calories come from carbs, fat, or protein. So, fewer calories are better. And some practical advice is also take into account if the food is filling or not. So look at the calories in context to how filling it is. If a food is high in calorie, but it's also very filling, it's not as bad for you. And if a food is low calorie, but extremely unfilling, or maybe even makes you even hungry, then it's not necessarily good for you.
So Yossi, you're saying excess calories from any source turn into fat. Why fat? Why do they turn into fat in the body?
If they started out as carbs, they switch to fat. If they start out as protein, they switch to fat. If they start out as fat, they remain fat. Why does the body choose fat as its form of storage?
Right.
So the body stores it as fat because fat takes up the least space.
Oh, it's all about efficiency.
Yes. If the body will store energy for later, it would rather store it in a form that's efficient, that takes up very little space. So fat takes up less space than carbs and protein. Think about it. 130 calories of fat is a tablespoon of oil. 130 calories of protein is a full leg of chicken. That's much bigger than a tablespoon of oil. 130 calories of carbs is a bowl of cereal. That's much bigger than a tablespoon of oil. So it's much more efficient for the body to store extra calories in the form of fat. And if we would store extra calories in the form of carbs or protein, we would be the size of this room.
Because all that excess energy being stored will be taking up that much more room.
Also, if the body would decide to store extra calories in the form of protein, an overweight person would be called protein.
And protein would be the word that people feel uncomfortable saying.
And there will be like protein shaming and protein acceptance.
I feel so protein today.
Does this dress make me look protein? So because of that, all extra calories turn into fat.
Next, sugar.
Sugar, and when we say sugar is something to consider, we're specifically talking about added sugar or processed sugar. That type of sugar is the next thing you should consider. If it's sugar found naturally in an apple, and I'm not talking about a dried apple or apple juice, if it's sugar that's processed, and be careful because a lot of these labels will write no added sugars.
Right, they took the food and they processed it till it became sugar, and now you don't add any more sugar to it, so now there's no added sugars.
Marketers are always a step ahead of the consumer because the consumer is uneducated, so they just manipulate the situation and take processed sugars instead of adding sugar to the product. And the reason why we have to look at sugar is because sugar easily converts to fat, because sugar and fat are chemically very similar. Under a microscope, they're very similar. Do you know what the name for sugar is in biology?
No.
Carbohydrate. Carbohydrate. Because sugar is comprised of carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen. Carbohydrate. Do you know what fat is made of?
Cholesterol.
No. Also carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen. And it would be called carbohydrate too, but they couldn't call it that because that name was already used up on sugar. So they call it fat. But fat and sugar are chemically extremely similar. So sugar is the next thing to consider after you look at calories because it very easily converts to fat, and it also raises blood sugar and insulin activity, and it stops you from burning calories. And on a practical level, sugar makes food addictive. So that's another thing to consider. But that's already a self-control issue. That's not a physical issue.
We're discussing here the straight up weight-related issues, not the psychological issues. Next is protein.
Protein is very different from fat. So the body burns a lot of calories when it tries to convert protein into fat. Remember, we said calories from protein are changed into calories from fat and stored as fat in the body. So when the body attempts to transition the protein into fat, a lot of calories are burnt. More than when you exercise, which isn't saying much because you barely burn any calories from exercise.
That's a different discussion. Either way, the net gain of weight when it comes to protein is a lot lower than other nutrients, such as sugar and fat, and therefore it's much less problematic.
And protein also balances blood sugar, which is good for your metabolism. And on a practical advice level, protein also makes food filling. And if we look at the first three, calories, sugar, and protein, we're starting to get a little bit of an idea why the 7 skinny cows do not gain weight, because even though it's very high in calories, fat cows do not have any sugar, and they do have a lot of protein. So you see, you have to look at the whole picture. The fourth thing to consider,
fiber.
Fiber does not contribute calories, even though technically it has calories, because if you burn it, it produces energy, but humans are not able to digest it. so it just leaves the body. Or in the case of soluble fiber, a minimal number of calories are digested, but fiber either doesn't contribute or minimally contributes calories, and it balances blood sugar. And on a practical level, it does make food filling. But I do want to say that we did not mention carbs yet. And the reason why is because fiber makes carbs okay. So fiber's on the list. And when we say you have to look for the fiber content, that's in the context of carbs.
If there are 0 carbs, then the fiber is not necessarily as relevant.
Right. So a fat cow does not have any fiber in it, but also doesn't have any carbs in it. So we have another reason why the skinny cow did not gain weight from the fat cow. And finally,
Number 5, fat.
Fat easily turns into fat. That's why it's even on the list. But other than that, there really are no issues with fat, especially because unlike sugar, fat does not raise insulin. And the fact that fat is calorie dense, like we said, that a tablespoon of oil is 130 calories, remember? It works like that in the body and it works like that in the food. The reason why the body stores extra calories in the form of fat is because it's dense. So in your food, it's also dense. So practical advice would be don't eat such high fat foods because they'll also be high calorie, but the calorie issue was already covered.
So if you already looked at the calories, which obviously you did because it's the number one thing to look at, you already dealt with the issue of the fat being dense and having a lot of calories in it. The only issue is that it easily turns into fat, but that's very low on the level of importance as far as nutrients on the nutrition label. But don't get fooled. This idea of low fat not only doesn't mean very much in a good way, like we're saying, that it's not so important to have low fat, but the removal of fat usually means that something else is being added to make up for the texture and the taste and flavor
that is lost
by removing the fat, right? So low fat is actually a warning sign that there is possibly something wrong with this food worse than fat.
If the company is advertising that it's low fat, that's usually...
Of course. I'm going to get a little animated here. Marketing. That's what this is all about. When you see something that says low fat on it, it's marketing. It's aimed at people like us that want to be healthier, right? Calling potatoes and mayonnaise salad. That's marketing. You're calling it salad. Why? Because salad sounds healthier. I'm calling sugar water vitamin water. Put some natural food coloring into potato crisp things, and now it's veggie chips. Sounds healthy. So it's basically all marketing that only works because we are not educated enough to realize that this is not so important. If you want to know the effect of marketing and how powerful it is and how much marketers actually use psychology for affecting how we buy things, researchers have found that dieters, us, are so interested in eating well that we are significantly more likely to choose unhealthy foods just because they're labeled healthy. Salad, obviously, is better than pasta. So if you have a way to market something as a salad as opposed to a pasta, that's better.
So macaroni salad.
Right. There was this experiment where all participants were given the exact same candy, a whole bunch of it, except that some of the candies were marked candy chews and some were marked fruit chews. Guess which one was assumed to be healthier?
Fruit chews?
Exactly. Remember, it is in the food producer's best interest to highlight the low fat over the extra sugar.
So everyone should drink soda because soda's even fat-free.
Right. And gluten-free. The more claims on a product's packaging, the more you should suspect that they are hiding something from you. That's why education is so important. Green labels, cartoon characters, and of course, obviously, right, low fat. These are all ways marketers play games with us. As humans, we are affected by these tactics. Those big words, low fat, seem more important than all the small words on the nutrition label. We buy green packaged food because we, on average, believe that food in green packaging is 20% healthier. 20%, straight up. Always look at the nutrition label and follow the order Yossi laid out. Calories, sugar, protein, fiber, and only after all that, fat. Ignore the label, just the nutrition aspect.
And another important thing about fat, unlike sugar, fat is actually important to include in your diet. You need some fat in your diet. For example, my clients are very often surprised when I suggest that they drink low-fat milk over skim milk.
Because a little fat is actually important for a few reasons. Your body needs fat.
You need some fat in your diet in order to lose weight, but you do not need any sugar.
Okay, so today's take-home message is
that you are what you eat, but not literally. And in general, try not to take things too literally because it's not so safe.
Right, you could get arrested if you take things literally.
Too literally. Like drive-through pharmacy.
Right. I didn't even need any medication or anything. The sign said I should drive through. So the window was right there.
Or the door that says exit only. And then you go through it. You tell the surprise store owner, hey, you have severely underestimated this door.
Yeah, this door could actually go in as well.
Or when you say 24-hour banking, I don't have time for that.
Right, yeah, that's mixing things up.
Well, it's taking things very literally.
Yes.
And that brings us to the end of this episode.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you join us next time.